I'm one of the founding partners of STIPO, Team for Interdisciplinary Urban Development, always looking at how can we create areas that are truly sustainable and have a lot of human scale, are about place, are about the social life, are about building community. How can we see real estate development as an opportunity to create more community? And I think that's what this idea of place-led development is all about. We have 20 minutes, so I might not be able to go through the entire presentation, but I'm happy to share that presentation. I would like to go into the why and the what, at least, and talk about cooperative area development. The bit where it comes to the criteria and tools that you can use for each development phase, maybe we can leave to the discussion. Again, happy to share the presentation for you guys to use it. So we've launched on this international program called The City at Eye Level, which is a title we got from young Gail, actually. And I really like that notion of the eye level, the city you experience around you. And this has been the base for us to work with a lot of partners internationally to discover what are the secrets of a great city at eye level. Because if you can get a little bit past your, you have that gut feeling sometimes when you're walking down a new city and you want to just turn a corner to a lovely street, maybe a street like this, and you just have that gut feeling, yeah, this is where I feel at home. And we're trying to understand that gut feeling and understand the mechanisms behind it, because if we can understand them and turn them into criteria, then we can replicate them more. And we think that's very necessary in area development. Now, this man here in my hometown, Amsterdam, he is reading his book in front of his house. It's just a meter, what we call the hybrid space, but it's a very important zone from the private to the public, where you can more or less co-create the city. And here he simply co-creates the city by placing his chair there. He also told us, by the way, after we took the picture, that I'm bringing the book, but I already know I'm hardly going to be able to read it because people will pass by and I will have a talk. And he lives alone in his home. And this is his way of connecting to the city. And we know from research that 80% of spontaneous contacts in the neighborhood happen in this zone. So if you don't plan for the zone, you kind of miss out on 80% of spontaneous social contacts. Now we see a lot of new development happening that uses the same principles, like this one here in King's Cross in the UK, in London. But unfortunately, this is not common practice if you look at the average area development. So we're not just interested in just doing area and property development, but we'd like to mix this with the notions of placemaking. And Mr. Janne Alho already showed us the slide of the principles of projects for public spaces that are very influential for this. But then we would also like to mix this with the social aspect of community development, and where area development, community development, and placemaking overlap. That's where we truly get into place-led development. So why is it important? Well, first of all, for us, public space is a fundament for sustainably functioning areas. Here on the right, you see the city of San Francisco, St. Elmo Square, great studies in 1899, in 1931, and in 1976. And you see the buildings change through the decades. It's a highly adaptable system. But you can also see that the public space grid is very much the backbone of the system. So if you get that right, whereas nowadays in area development, very often we see that everything is being planned, and the last thing we have left over at the end of the process is what we call public space, which is kind of doing the reverse way. For us, it's not just about creating nice places. It taps into much deeper values. Of course, there's the community building aspect. We hope to create healthier cities by stimulating people to walk, cycle, meet their neighbors. Social contacts are a big part of health and happiness, actually. We discover more and more through research. It feeds on the creativity and innovation. We partner with the Brookings Institution and with Julie Wagner, and we find through their work that for innovation districts, actually this sense of place, measuring in footsteps rather than in kilometers, is super important. Of course, we have a lot of issues in our cities with climate resilience and nature, and great places can help to make greener and softer spaces. And it's very much also about creating a very inclusive city, open to the most vulnerable users, such as the children, elderly, etc. So for us, placemaking is never just about creating nice physical places. Of course, it has that aspect very much, but it's also about creating social capital, cultural capital, economic capital, and green capital at the same time. And then if we talk about place-led development, of course, we shouldn't only convince ourselves, and we shouldn't only convince the municipalities working on this, but we also need the property developers to be on board. And the good thing is that if you do this, if you get this right, it's also good for property development. For instance, we're working on the Rotterdam Central District, very central location in the city of Rotterdam. This is actually the street connecting the central train station with the central square of the city. And this is unimaginable, right? The way the buildings were built kind of kills the public space here. We are working with the real estate owners to open up the ground floors. And initially they said, yeah, but this is costing us a lot of money because we don't earn that back renting out the ground floor spaces. And then we started saying, well, but maybe you should look at your business case in a different way, because that's your primary business case. But your secondary business case is that if the area is alive, if it's vibrant, if there's a sense of place, if you open up those ground floors better, then you will earn your money not on the ground floor use itself, but on the property value of the higher layers in the area. So it's very interesting to see that we work more and more with long-term investors who get this long-term principle. So I would say if you get this right, not only will you build better cities, you will create a lot of different values, both the social, cultural, and the economic values. Now, if this is also logic, why doesn't it happen by itself more? Because if you look at the majority of area development, mostly, to be honest, no matter where, right? If it's here in Amsterdam, in my hometown, in the Netherlands, in Europe, in other parts of the world, a lot of times we feel you could have done so much more. Well, we see a lot that in the process of planning, which is always very complicated, of course, and complex, you need to think about a lot. And the idea of social life, about community, more or less comes in at the end, if it comes in at all. A lot of times it happens that a whole planning process has been gone through, and then at the end, somebody in the project plan, the project team wakes up and thinks, but we wanted it to be a vibrant area, let's do some placemaking. And of course, then you can still do a lot, but by that time you are likely to have made so many mistakes that will deteriorate the quality of the social life of the public space. We see a lot of standardization in the construction going on at the moment, of course, because it's cheaper. We don't do the masonry on site anymore. We don't have that, the cost of labor is just too high for that. So more and more we see prefab facades being made in factories and then glued to a concrete structure on the side. And then that leads to a kind of a sterile development. This picture could have basically been taken anywhere, no, in the world. And of course, there's the difference between the short-term profit of a real estate developer that may find it cheaper, for instance, not to have to build an underground parking garage, but put the parking on the ground floor, but then killing the public space for the next 30, 40, 100 years. Who knows how long this block is going to be here. But they will have sold it at the end of the project, and they might not consider it their problem, versus the creation of long-term value, where it's important to create this public space. So we're really talking about systematic change as far as we're concerned, in which we need all the developers, investors, the designers, and the municipalities to be on board and to consider themselves as placemakers and community builders. Now, we take inspiration from a lot of cities, among others, Toronto, which is growing very fast, right? This is 2006, this is 2016. And they're using the pressure on urban development to create better public space. So not just for the sake of building as many houses as possible. So they would take a street like this, quite desolate, not very human-skilled, car-oriented, and they would use the densification to create this. This is the exact same street, right? If you go back and forth a little bit. Behind that, there's a system where they design complete streets. And by the way, this is the work that under Jennifer Kiesmaat that has been done, wonderful strategies. And then down to the building level, where there's individual criteria for the building, every building should meet in order to create the social life and great public space. We've done a similar project in Utrecht, in the Beurskwartier, where from the very start, we started with the public space as a backbone, then thought which are going to be the vibrant ground floors, which are going to be the more quiet streets, the blue ones, because you can't have life everywhere. And then down to the frameworks. For instance, the wind blows a lot in the Netherlands, so you can have higher volumes, but you need a setback in the facade on the 4th floor, so to bend the wind away from public space. And then I saw this in the plans for Aviapolis, I think, as well. Not just to create one block by one designer, because then it will be boring. You won't have the variety, but to cut it up into several volumes in order to get the variety on the street. So we would say that the city at eye level is not just only the public space, but it includes the facades of buildings and the ground floor uses and the permeability, the relationship between inside and outside. So there's a shared responsibility between the public sector and the private sector. And then, of course, there's this idea of the Maslow's pyramid of doing this for public space. So we get a lot that the city will take care of the kind of the fundamental needs. It takes care that the place is clean and safe, but that's not really saying, I feel at home here in Aviapolis. This is just functional space, right? You want it to be place. You want it to be social, active, fun, creative, healthy, happy, inspiring. And this is only what you can achieve if you co-create the space with the community and the municipality, both on board, and the real estate developers, etc., all the stakeholders at the table. And then we know from all our cases that it's not just enough to think of great design. You should start with the users and the activities, so that's what we call the software. Then the design should follow, that's the hardware, and this is a very iterative process as far as we're concerned. But then the orware also comes in. How do you organize the creation of places over time? Because you don't create a place just by designing and building it. It creates itself over time through the co-creation with the users. So I hope we still have a bit of time to go into cooperative area development, because I would like to just quickly share one case of our practice where we've managed to do this, and we've managed to build this orgware system, this organization, to be able to keep doing this. And the previous speakers, Mr. Jan Alhol was also saying that you need to create a platform for discussion. You need the collaboration between all the stakeholders in the area. We've been working on this transformation area in Newtown, just south of Utrecht. It's 80 hectares and it has 100 different owners. So it's an existing area with a lot of vacancy and a lot of very quite ugly 80s office buildings like this. Mirror glass buildings, big parking lot around it, some green next to the road, but that's it. The area is being transformed into a mixed use area. Probably it's very similar to the idea in Aviapolis. And we've realized that we can only do this with all the owners on board. But not only the owners, you need the real estate developers, you need the businesses in the area, you need the residents who are coming in more and more as you progress with the redevelopment. And we need a lot of social and creative initiatives to bring the area to life. So we've built this area cooperative, which is the platform. It's called the Club Rhijnhuizen. We wanted to have a club feeling. We have club nights where we eat dinner together, for instance. And then after dinner, we discuss the important things for the area. And the resident will be sitting next to the real estate developer over dinner, and they discover they have similar hobbies. And this creates this network of soft relationships. We have more than 450 people active in the area cooperative right now. And very importantly, we're also a big partner for and with the municipality of Nieuwegein. So the municipality really stands next to us, listens to what comes out of the area cooperative, and makes sure that a lot of things happen that come out of, are being put on the agenda by the cooperative. So we started out by doing a lot of matchmaking to turn ugly buildings like these into new residential projects, or to have ugly 70s buildings like these torn down and build a sustainable new neighborhood in the area. But we also engage a lot on placemaking. And this is one of the place games. We can talk about it a little bit later, but this is a tool to get the process of placemaking starting, just starting with small contributions. We wanted a playground. There's a fortress in the area. We're kind of lucky for that. And we're opening up that fortress as a park from 1820. And just building a playground, activating the place, doing events, part of heritage days, doing summer festivals, getting temporary use in. There was a lot that wasn't going to be used for the next 2 years. And the real estate developer said, yeah, we can do a competition with you guys. We got the tiny houses, largest tiny houses village in the Netherlands to be there for 2 years, creating a new community there and linking with the ties of the existing community. And now, step by step, because of this, we've accelerated a lot. We started out thinking that now maybe we would construct 800 new houses in 20 years. We're now 5 years down the road, and we are up to 2,500 houses in the meantime. And there's a lot of initiatives in the area, and the people feel at home. They feel proud to say, I'm part of Rhijnhuizen. And by the way, small investments lead to big investments, because we now got the idea to create an entire park in the entire area. And we just got word that the central government, the national government, will put 1.8 million euros into making this happen. So start small and end bigger in your dreams, which is the iterative process of placemaking we like. And by the way, this area cooperative is independently funded, but that's maybe for the discussion. We're now taking this model to other areas. For instance, just before the lockdown, I was in Melbourne to help them with an area 4 times the size, kind of the size of the downtown area of Melbourne itself. Again, a redevelopment area with a lot of fragmented ownership. They're going to have this place management organization based on the same principles as we kind of discovered in this area cooperative. So just to show for now, and then I will stop, there's a lot of criteria in the book and tools on our websites that you can use for using this in your process. We've separated them for each stage of the planning process, and then the development phase and the management phase after. So there's a lot of knowledge available for you to use to hopefully turn Aviapolis more into a home for people. So with that, I would like to leave some room for questions for now.
I hope I know how to use this.
I don't think I can hear you now, Katja.
Can you hear me now,
yes.
then?
Yes, now I can.
Yes. I'm not perfect at this, what is it, multitasking it's called. Thank you very much, Hans. That was really very inspiring and actually very, very relevant. Immediately a question from the audience, like more info about place games. Can you give a source how to get more into that?
Yeah, we noticed that there's more and more awareness for placemaking, luckily, nowadays, and more people start to ask these questions, but how do we do it? So we're also part of Placemaking Europe, of course. On the website of Placemaking Europe, we started sharing manuals on how to do these things. So for instance, there's a manual how to do the place game step by step, how to prepare for it, what should you do during the place game, what should you do after. The great thing about a place game, I think it's always a moment in a much larger strategy. So you can't just do a place game and think, okay, then everything will be all right, because then it will kind of fall on the ground. But it's a great workshop. It takes about 3 hours. You can do it with a community of residents, of real estate developers, designers, municipality. We like to get a very mixed community on board always, up to 40 people. And by the end of those 3 hours, you go into the area, you analyze through these notions of the city at eye level. We also have an eye level game, by the way. And at the end of those 3 hours, you basically have your plan for the short term and you have your plan for the longer term. And you tap into the collective knowledge of the community. So I always like it as a kind of a start of the process.
Here we have more questions. So, this tells that it is a very international crowd indeed, which is, of course, like an honor that we are creating Nordic city making and people from all around the world are chiming. A question to you. Good morning, Hans. Do you think this could work in cities in Africa too?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of placemaking going on in Africa as well. I always say people are natural born placemakers. We just tend to forget it during becoming a professional, an urban planner, a designer, or working for a municipality or working for a real estate developer. But in our hearts, we're all just people who love a great place around us, right? We love to be part of the community. We love to connect. And of course, the context is different in different situations. So for instance, right now we're working on a book called The City at Eye Level Asia, for the specific Asia context. And then some of the values underneath it are more universal, I would say. The way we look, the way we listen, the way we perceive the area around us, those are quite universal. But then, of course, the climate, the cultural differences are completely different. So this is always why you need to do this with the community. But there's people like Mark Ojal, very active on placemaking in the international network from Africa and doing a lot of placemaking in Africa as well. There's a lot of development going on, of course, in African cities right now, very much based on the Chinese developer model, which is very often, I would say, the contrary of this. So I would hope that more and more of the urban development would also be based on these principles more, because I think we will regret not doing this 30, 40 years from now and realize then that we've not created sustainable cities.
About Schiphol as the airport city, is it, in your opinion, a good example of developing this kind of what you were now describing, or what would you do differently?
Of course, a big difference is that there's no housing in the area, unlike the project that you guys seem to be developing, which is very exciting. But a lot of the things they got right. So, for instance, you arrive at the airport by plane. You can just walk down, go to the train immediately, and within 10 minutes you're at Central Station in Amsterdam. So, and I think that's super, super important to have that kind of transit connection. But then on the area itself, there's the so-called air side behind the gates and the land side before the gates. It's actually one of the chapters in the City at Eye Level book, so you can read up more on it. It's a super commercial area, of course, but they did realize that it's not just enough to squeeze the shops out as much as possible to pay the highest rents. It's also important to build to include identity builders for people to want to return. And to create a great social atmosphere as well. So, and the why they can do this is because there's a kind of a retail management that is very detailed, which I think is it's a very commercial example, but it can be an example of what you can do in areas as well. So they got the orgware right, all right? So they really are managing the way the shops look, the diversity of the shops. They're doing a lot of analysis on how people walk, how people experience, and then use that to improve the place. But they also include a park, for instance, indoor, and they put an airplane somewhere. And when my kids were young, we always had to go there. So it was kind of the identity builder that wants you to come back to this place.